Hello everyone and welcome to my Soap Twist 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Nobody in Los Angeles had ever seen Eric Forrester appear little. Nor in the boardroom when he fired his own son. Nor in the tabloids when his marriages dissolved, and not even on the day he fainted at the gala, blood seeping from his nose while the string quartet continued to play. Eric Forrester did not do anything minor. He didn't do fragile. He surely did not retire. Yet there he was, seated at the head of the long glass table in the Forrester Creations executive conference room, his hands quivering just enough to rattle the platinum cufflinks against the wood as he attempted to sign the quarterly predictions. The tremor had begun 6 months previously, a slight discomfort he attributed to too much espresso and insufficient sleep. It now had a name. According to the best neurologist on the West Coast, a rare microangiopathic illness that was slowly, inexorably causing the blood capillaries in his brain to harden. The prognosis was death in slow motion, rather than death tomorrow. Months, even a year or two if he was fortunate and cautious. The treatment consisted of rest, stress reduction, and surrender, which Eric Forrester had never allowed himself. Ridge stood at the other end of the table, arms folded so tightly that his jacket pulled at the shoulders. He'd come prepared for combat. The packet in front of him held medical records, legal documentation, and a copy of the retirement agreement, which would immediately and permanently give him day-to-day management of Forrester Creations. The physicians insisted that was the only way. Stress would kill Eric faster than the disease. Ridge had said that line to himself 1,000 times in the mirror, attempting to make it sound like mercy rather than a coup. Steffi sat rigidly across from Ridge, her eyes flickering between her father and her grandfather with the calculating stillness of someone who has long realized that silence could be a weapon. Carter was also present, neutral as always, but his fingers hovered over a tablet containing the amended succession plan that Eric had refused to approve for weeks. Then there was Brooke, standing behind Eric's chair like a bodyguard, one manicured palm resting softly on his shoulder, as if to remind everyone which side fate had chosen decades ago. "Dad," Ridge said quietly, almost gently, "we're not asking you to cease being Eric Forrester. We're asking you to stop trying to do it all while your body is failing you." Eric laughed sharply, more bark than joy. "Are you failing me? These hands have drawn every legendary Forrester gown since before you were born, Ridge. They held you the day you returned home from the hospital. They signed the documents that established this empire. And you're telling me they're done because a doctor in Beverly Hills says I'm shaking slightly? You aren't shaking a little," Ridge shouted, the tenderness fading. "You are having microstrokes. You overlooked the full spring line presentation last week. You addressed Hope as Caroline 3 times in one chat. You almost signed over the patent for the Forrester Intimates formula to a Chinese business since the email appeared to be official." Eric's face flushed pink. "That was one mistake. That was the third of the quarter. And it's not all mistakes, Dad. You're staying here until 3 in the morning because you don't trust anyone else to complete a transaction. You're flying to Milan for international couture when you can't stand for more than 10 minutes without tunneling your vision. You are murdering yourself to demonstrate that you are still invincible, yet all you are proving is that you are human. For once in your life, be human." The room became so quiet that they could hear the air conditioner hum through the vents. Eric glanced down at his son, the legendary Forrester blue eyes still capable of causing lesser men to fold. However, Ridge refused to give up. He had practiced this moment for weeks. He had cried in his automobile after every incident. "Finally," Eric said, his voice calmer but no less menacing. "What happens when I step aside? Did you remove my chair? You put my name on the door, but left me out of the decision-making process? Because that isn't retirement, Ridge." "That was a slow execution," Brooke said, his fingers tightening over his shoulder. "Eric, no one is attempting to erase you." Eric shrugged and leaned closer. "Then explain the clause buried on page 17. The one who removes my voting shares the moment I sign. The one that allows the board to dismiss me as chairman emeritus if I am deemed medically unfit by a single physician of the CEO's choice. That physician isn't the same one Ridge is on retainer with, would it? Steffi inhaled hard. Carter was suddenly fascinated by the tabletop. Ridge did not flinch. It is a safeguard, Eric explained. It's a kill switch. And you're the one holding the button. At that point, the meeting was irreparably damaged. Eric stood, trembling slightly, and swept every document from the table in one violent move. Papers fluttered like wounded birds. The meeting is ended. I'm heading to the design room. Some of us still have an empire to run. He took 3 steps before the second microstroke struck. It was minor, only a momentary weakness in his left leg and a metallic taste in his mouth, but it was enough. He stumbled. Ridge caught him before he struck the ground, his powerful arms closing around the man who had previously carried him on his shoulders around Disneyland. For a single heartbeat, they were father and son again. Then Eric shoved him away so violently that Ridge staggered. "Don't you dare," Eric screamed. "Don't you dare use my body against me." He strode out alone, spine straight, rejecting Brooke's arm and everyone else. That night, the Forster mansion became a mausoleum. Eric sat in his study, the lights dimmed, staring at the photograph of Stephanie that still hung above the fireplace. The tremble in his hands had worsened, and the Waterford crystal scotch tumbler clinked against his teeth with each sip. He had disregarded the nurse Ridge had hired, the chef who now exclusively produced low-sodium meals, and the notion that his life was no longer his own. His phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. "I know what Ridge has planned. Meet me tomorrow. Same place we met when you rescued the company from Bill Spencer. Come alone.
Z.
Only one person signed text that way.
Zend.
But Zend had been in Paris for some years. Unless... Eric gazed at the message until the screen darkened. His eldest grandson, whom the family rarely discussed because Ridge never completely accepted him as a Forrester in the same way that he welcomed Thomas and Steffi. The one whose designs were fantastic, innovative, and courageous was constantly overlooked since he wore the Dominguez name as much as the Forrester one. Eric texted back, shaking his thumbs. "Midnight tomorrow. I will be there." He did not inform anyone. Not Brooke, Quinn, who called from wherever she was hiding this month, or Donna, who came by with lemon bars and anxious eyes.
This was his war now.
The next night, Eric drove himself to the old Arts District warehouse where Forrester had previously surreptitiously assembled a bootleg collection to save the company from bankruptcy. The structure was now abandoned, with shattered windows and graffiti running down the brick. Zend lurked in the shadows, wearing a black sweatshirt, hands in pockets, and exuding a prodigal appearance. "Granddad," he spoke softly, "you shouldn't be driving." "Don't start," Eric said, but there was no hate in it. He examined the young man, noting his prominent cheekbones, the artist's hands, and the eyes that contained centuries of hate. "You said you know what Ridge is planning." Zen took out his phone and handed it over. The screen displayed an email chain between Ridge and a lawyer Eric did not recognize. The subject line said, "Accelerated Guardianship Petition. Eric Forrester." Eric scrolled.
His stomach turned into ice.
The plan was clinically cruel. If Eric refused to retire freely, Ridge would file for emergency conservatorship, using the neurological condition as proof of incapacity. The disease that the family had kept private would become public ammunition. Doctors were already lining up to testify. Steffi agreed to sign as a co-petitioner. Even Hope, sweet Hope, appeared to be convinced it was for his own good. Once guardianship was granted, Ridge would control not only Forrester Creations, but all assets in Eric's name, including bank accounts, real estate, and the mansion. Eric would be allowed to live in the guest house, with supervision. At the bottom, one line in bold. The goal is to transfer all assets to biological Forrester heirs within 24 months of guardianship approval. Non-biological heirs, Rick, Bridget, Thorne, Zend, etc., will inherit only the statutory minimum. Eric returned the phone with fingers that hardly worked. "He's going to kill me with kindness," he muttered. Zend's voice sounded harsh. "Put me in a cage and call it protection. I was not even supposed to witness this."
Nicole sent it to me by accident.
She is interning at the legal company. Eric slumped onto a broken box, the weight of 75 years crushing him all at once. Granddad, I'm sorry. I established this company with my own hands. I forgave every betrayal, infidelity, and knife in the back because we were family. And now my own kid wants to pronounce me dead when I'm still alive. Zend paused and then sat beside him. There's only one way to stop it. Eric looked up sharply. Change your will, Zend advised. Tonight. I've already called Uncle Thorne. He's a notary now, remember?
He is on his way.
We rewrite everything. The firm, the mansion, the patents, and the trusts. All of it goes to someone Ridge never expected. You? Eric inquired, not unkindly. Zend shook his head.
No.
I do not want it. I want a design. I want to earn it. But there is someone who has remained faithful to you when others have not. Ridge has spent years attempting to push out. Someone who is Forrester blood but has never been given the name. Eric's eyes widened. You can't mean RJ, Zend replied. Your youngest grandson. Ridge has his own son. The one he overlooks because he is too gentle, too similar to Brooke. The person who sat with you every night in the hospital after you suffered a heart attack. The one who still asks for your feedback on his sketches rather than posting them for likes. Eric closed his eyes. He could see it now, clear as day. RJ, the quiet, attentive RJ, inherited Eric's eye for line and proportion, but not his father's vicious ambition. RJ, who had spent the previous year quietly learning from Eric in the studio long after everyone else had gone home. RJ cried more than everyone else when the diagnosis was announced. Rich would never use it against his father, Eric explained gently. No, Zend agreed. But he'd protect it.
For you.
When Rich attempts to take everything through the courts, he will be taking it from his own kid. The press will destroy him. Steffi will turn against him to defend her daughter Kelly's fortune. The guardianship breaks apart. You maintain control until you decide to step down. On your conditions. Eric was silent for a long time. Then he laughed, his first genuine chuckle in months. You sneaky little bastard. Which one? You got it from your grandmother.
Zend grinned.
Both. Thorne came 20 minutes later, notary stamp in hand, and appeared to have aged a decade since the last family supper. He didn't ask any questions, just spread the new documents across the hood of Eric's Bentley and watched his father hand over the enterprise to the grandchild no one expected. Page after page, the signature trembled but remained steady. When it was finished, Eric added one more codicil, handwritten because his lawyer was not present. In the event of any attempt to declare me incapacitated against my will, all assets immediately transfer to R.J. Forrester and Trust, with Zend Forrester Dominguez as co-trustee. Rich Forrester will receive a lifetime stipend equal to his present pay and nothing more. This isn't punishment. This is protection. I adore you, son. But I will not allow you kill me to prove that you are ready to take my position. Yours, Eric Forrester. They traveled to a 24-hour UPS outlet and delivered the originals to 3 separate safe deposit boxes that none in the family knew about. Copies were delivered to RJ's apartment, along with a letter that simply stated, "Only open if something happens to me. Trust Zend." Ridge's move came 2 days later. He came at the mansion with court officers, a doctor, and Steffi at his side, all white-faced and resolute. Eric was in the living room, dressed in a black suit and drinking coffee as if it were any other morning. Brooke stood behind him, her eyes red from crying all night. "Dad," Ridge whispered, his voice cracking despite everything, "this is for your own good." Eric smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. "Actually, son," he replied, "I think you'll find it's for yours." He handed Ridge an envelope. Inside was a cease and desist letter from a law firm Ridge had never heard of, as well as a press release plan to be issued in 30 minutes revealing the revised succession plan and RJ's instant appointment to co-CEO under Eric's direct supervision. Ridge's face turned gray. "You wouldn't." "I already did," Eric responded. "You wanted me to retire?" "Fine. I am retiring. Effective on the day I die. Which, according to my new doctor, who is not on your payroll, will be several years from now because I've opted to delegate the tasks that stress me out, like dealing with treacherous children. He turned to face Steffi. And you, princess. You've agreed to steal from your granddad. Enjoy explaining it to the newspapers when they discover you attempted to disinherit your own brother. Steffi fell into tears. Not the prettiest sort. Ridge appeared to have been shot in the gut. Are you giving RJ my company? The child, Eric cut in icily, has more Forrester in his little finger than you've showed over the last decade. And he's the only one who's never tried to put me in a home to get it. He stood up straight now, his trembling improved by the sheer power of victory. Oh, and Ridge. You're fired. Security will lead you out. The guest home is open if you need a place to stay. The court officers exchanged glances, unsure which side to take. The doctor mumbled something about needing to verify the new medical records. Steffi escaped to her car. Ridge merely stood there, the petition quivering in his hand, as Eric's did. Eric approached the door and held it open. 4 ways you could have killed me, son, he remarked gently. You could have waited. You could have trusted. You might have loved me more than you do power. You could have let me go when it was appropriate. Instead, you attempted to force me out while I could still fight back. And now I have. Ridge opened his mouth but said nothing. Eric's voice lowered to a whisper that only his son could hear. I forgive you for every affair, every lie, every time you picked Taylor above your mother, and every time you elevated Thomas to a pedestal while Rick bled death in the parking lot. But this? Are you trying to cage me as if I'm already dead? That I will not forgive.
He took a step back.
Goodbye, Ridge. Security seized Ridge's arms. He did not resist. Weeks later, Forrester Creations thrived under the weirdest leadership it had ever known. Eric, semi-retired but still sketching every day, RJ, wide-eyed and overwhelmed but assuming the role with startling speed, and Zend, who finally designed under the Forrester label without apologies. The press called it the miracle succession, the family called it World War IV, and Eric sat on the terrace of the mansion that remained his, sipping scotch with hands that rarely shook anymore, watching the sunset paint the city gold. He raised his glass to the vacant space where Stephanie's image would have gazed. I told you I'd protect it, Steph, he said softly. Even from our own son. Inside, RJ was joking with Zend about fabric swatches. The sound faded away, fresh, courageous, and full of potential. Eric beamed, his first genuine smile since the diagnosis. He'd chosen life. And in doing so, he had eliminated the one thing that was genuinely attempting to kill him, his son's desire. Eric, meanwhile, is struggling with his own mortality. He is aware of his age, of his mistakes, and of the possibility that people would doubt his stability. But he refuses to be dismissed as an outmoded relic. His desire to retain control of Forrester Creations originates not simply from pride, but also from identity. Without his firm and the thrill of creating, he feels he has nothing left. The notion of Ridge removing anything from him is heartbreaking. Eric's asset transfer raises the question of whether it was motivated by love or vengeance. Is he rewarding someone who has demonstrated true commitment and compassion? Or is he purposely targeting Ridge by removing him from the inheritance? Eric's motivations will define the emotional consequences, determining whether this is a tragic miscommunication or a determined act of retaliation. As the novel progresses, the Forrester family finds itself at a crossroads. Family members are beginning to take sides, subtly positioning themselves based on who they believe will win. Some share Ridge's worries about Eric's deteriorating ability. Others feel Ridge is blinded by ambition and refuses to see his father's eternal talent. Meanwhile, rumors about the Stepchild heir spread rapidly, fueling paranoia and surprising alliances. In the end, the true tragedy is not whether Ridge pushes Eric to retire or whether Eric disinherits him, but rather the breakdown of a relationship founded on decades of love, rivalry, admiration, and agony. Ridge and Eric have spent years fighting for control of the company and mutual recognition. However, underlying the power conflicts lies a kinship that is not fully understood or appreciated until it is challenged. Ridge may win the company by driving Eric out, but He will lose the man who nurtured him, guided him, and loved him despite their shortcomings. If Eric transfers his possessions to a stepchild, he may secure his legacy while destroying his family. The Forresters have never faced a more serious challenge. Ridge and Eric's conflict is more than just a power struggle. It is a fight for identity, legacy, and survival. And as the truth about the stepchild heir becomes clearer, the ground beneath Forrester Creations begins to move, paving the way for one of the show's most explosive, emotional, and sad storylines in years.